Hello and welcome to episode 17 of Cold Case Christmas. And in this episode, we're going to be looking at one of the most baffling disappearances I've ever seen. And this is the case of Brian Shaffer, who walked into a bar one night and then never came out. But where did he go? It's so bizarre, it's unbelievable, but yet it happened. So let's tell Brian's story. Brian Shaffer was born in 1979 in Pickerington, Ohio, graduated high school in 1997 and attended Ohio State University. Although he was training as a medic, his real passion was music. He wanted to start a band. His favourite band was Pearl Jam, and he had a logo of theirs tattooed onto his arm. He had a girlfriend called Alexis. She was also a medical student. Those closest to them believed he was planning to propose to her on a trip they'd planned to Miami just before Brian's disappearance. Shortly before Brian's disappearance, the Shaffer family was struck with tragedy when his mother died of bone cancer. But then, on March 31st, 2006, Brian and his roommate William Florence, nicknamed Clint, walked to the Ugly Tuna Saloon bar in Columbus University District. They wanted to blow off some steam from their spring finals. So this is where things get really weird. Really weird. Around 10 p.m, Brian called Alexis to confirm their trip and to tell her that he loved her. She was headed to visit her parents in Toledo before reuniting with Brian on Monday morning. So Brian and Clint, they had some beers, they took some shots at the Ugly Tuna, and then they wandered over to the Arena District where they met Meredith Reed, who was one of Clint's friends, who offered to drive them back to the Ugly Tuna. Security footage outside of the Ugly Tuna confirms that all three of them rode the escalator to the bar's second-storey entrance at 1:15 a.m. Brian re-emerged just before 2 a.m. and was seen chatting with two women in their 20s. And that's the last sighting of Brian Shaffer. At the time, he was wearing jeans, trainers, and a striped shirt, which was either green or blue. Can't make it out from the surveillance footage. The bar closed shortly thereafter at 2 a.m, but Brian was nowhere to be seen. So did he slip away into the night just before the bar closed? Clint and Meredith tried to call Brian, but he didn't answer. They searched the bar and the bathroom, but he'd gone. At 2:10 a.m, Clint sent Brian a text asking where he was, and that was the very last signal recovered from Brian's phone. They just assumed that he'd gone. His apartment was only a few blocks away, so it was a perfectly reasonable explanation. Clint and Meredith thought nothing of it. The following day, Alexis couldn't reach Brian. The pair were due to fly to Miami on their trip the following Monday. Alexis was concerned because they normally spoke every day, so she rang Randy, Brian's father, telling him something was wrong. She just had a feeling. A missing persons report was filed, but nobody really at this point took it that seriously. No one could have imagined that they'd never see Brian again. And they hoped that he'd just turn up at the airport on Monday for his flight to Miami. When he failed to show up at the airport, his friends and his family became incredibly worried. They knew that Brian wasn't going to miss this trip for anything. He was looking forward to this trip. It was only weeks after his mother's death. He needed to blow off steam. That's why he went out the night with Clint. He'd had his finals and he needed a break. But nobody saw him leave the Ugly Tuna. Police could account for every other person that entered and exited the building from the CCTV as they left the building, apart from Brian. That means Brian must have exited the building a different way, which would have meant an emergency exit or a service door. Now, there are 4 more doors to this place. Every exit, apart from one, was covered in some way by CCTV. But this one door that wasn't covered by CCTV exited onto a construction site. Why would Brian sneak out via a door? How would he work out that this door didn't have CCTV, and he'd head out there across a construction site. What, to run away? That seems really bizarre. But police thought that must have been the door that Brian left the bar from. He wasn't in the bar, and he didn't seem to leave, so he had to have left by this unprotected door. It doesn't make sense. And no other CCTV cameras in the area at all caught sight of Brian. He's 6'2" and weighs 170 pounds. Not a small guy, not somebody who can just creep away without anybody or anything picking him up. But that's what happened. It's absolutely bizarre. Every day Alexis would call Brian's phone, and every time it would go to voicemail, except once when it rang, but nobody picked up. Now, this was hugely hopeful for the family. They thought, well, maybe Brian was alive somewhere, he'd run away. And if so, they just wanted to talk to him just to see if he was okay. And he'd taken his phone and he was periodically checking it, and he just happened to have his phone on when Alexis rang. But no, the phone provider said that that was probably just a system glitch. Bizarrely though, a cell tower located a ping from Brian's phone at Hillard, 14 miles west of Columbus. Now, it's unknown if that was also a system glitch or whether that was a genuine ping. Now, there has been many tips over the years. Psychics have got involved. There's been sightings all over the US and as far as Europe, but nothing solid. And honestly, Brian is a fairly generic looking guy, so there's probably a lot of people out there who look like Brian. There's been a lot of theories as to what happened to Brian Shaffer. Could the friends have had something to do with it? Meredith took a lie detector test, which she passed. However, Clint refused to take a test. He got lawyered up. He refused to participate any further in the search for Brian, which makes him sound guilty, but we shouldn't imply guilt over that. He probably thought, he's the last guy to see Brian. Perhaps they're trying to pin it on him. And Brian's brother Derek and Alexis both think that Clint knows more than he's letting on. It's alleged that Clint and Brian were said to have had an argument inside the Ugly Tuna on the night that Brian went missing. But if they'd fought and Clint had murdered Brian, then somebody in the bar would have known about it. There would have been evidence, there would have been witnesses. And if Clint had managed to get Brian's body out of the building, he would have had to have gone through that service door with no CCTV and across a construction site. So that seems unlikely. Possible, but not probable. Police had no evidence that Clint had any involvement, so didn't pursue him as a suspect. Another theory is that this was a tragic accident, that Brian was so drunk that he tried to leave and he went out, just by accident, went out of that door that didn't have the CCTV, and he accidentally fell on the construction site. But they checked and double checked that area. Search dogs were used throughout the entire area and came up with nothing. So the chances of him having an accident and dying on that construction site, again, not very likely at all. Another theory is that he committed suicide, that he intentionally went out of that door without the CCTV. He just slipped away into the night and took his own life. His mother had recently died. He had been under some stress taking his finals for the spring. But friends say that he was generally in good spirits and he was really looking forward to his trip to Miami because his mother had bought it for him and Alexis. Obviously, a lot of people hide their mental anguish and mental pain very well, so that doesn't necessarily mean anything. But still, if he went somewhere to commit suicide, why has he never been found? Where would he have possibly gone? Could he have just gone away to start a new life? Maybe he didn't want to follow in his mother's footsteps and become a doctor. Maybe he went somewhere to become a musician, follow his heart. But why would he go without telling anybody? Could he have been murdered? Could he have wandered away, going out the wrong door, and then been murdered? I guess. but the police never found any evidence of foul play in the area, so who knows? Brian Shaffer's been missing since 2006 in the most bizarre circumstances possible. His credit cards, his bank account, never been used. And Brian's dad has since passed away. His only remaining family now is his younger brother, who is still searching for him. Hope briefly came when in 2020, a photo of what looked like an American man who was homeless somewhere in Mexico bore an uncanny resemblance to Brian, and it went viral. But after facial analysis, the FBI determined that it wasn't him. If alive, Brian Shaffer would now be in his 40s. The Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation released an age progression photo of him in hopes that somebody might spot him somewhere, should he still be alive. But if anybody was in the area or has seen somebody that they think is Brian and has a credible tip, then please contact Detective Andre Edwards of the Columbus Police Department, Ohio, at 614-645-4624 or aedwards@columbuspolice.org, or contact the FBI on 800-624-4097. This is one of the strangest cases I've ever heard of. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you very soon in the next episode of Cold Case Christmas. Bye guys.